very briskly into the program, and we're going to have the next keynote address by the Prime Minister St. Kitts and Nevis. He's not just the Prime Minister, he's a visionary leader. He's reshaping governance, and he has been leading with precision since 2022. He has championed economic resilience, healthcare reform, and global partnerships. He's a key figure in CARICOM and chair of the OECS. His influence, ladies and gentlemen, extends far beyond his nation. He drives regional progress with bold and strategic leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, taking us further for the next keynote address, join me as we welcome the Prime Minister, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terrance Michael Drew.
You know, let me start by saying that I'm happy to be home. It is my first trip back to what we term in the Caribbean as the motherland. That is how we see Africa. We see ourselves as part and parcel of this great continent. 400 years ago, my foreparents left Africa under very dire circumstances, against their will, to work for other people, to enrich them, and to put them in a position where they would oppress not only those who they directly enslaved, but would oppress the very continent from whence they took my forefathers, my foremothers. And so today, I return not as an enslaved one, but as a free child of Africa. To reconnect and to say to the world that we have come to recognize, after many centuries of deceit and misrepresentation, that we are one people indeed. Let me recognize here with us today, I want to recognize Her Excellency Dr. Fakim, who gave such an inspiring speech. Put your hands together for her. Thank you very much for joining me at this inaugural summit. I also want to recognize representative of President Orama. And President Orama is not just a partner in trade and business, but he has become a friend. And just to give you a story, when I was elected in August of 2022, my first trip outside of St. Kitts and Nevis was to Barbados. And that was to meet the Afreximbank representatives and President Orama. And from that point till now, we have developed, I will term, a friendship. I invited him to St. Kitts and Nevis. He sat with me in my cabinet room. And if you were to see a picture of my cabinet room, right behind me is a painting. Directly behind me is a painting. And that painting comes from this continent, and it was a dear gift from President Orama. And so we have all embarked on this great concept of reconnecting the West and the East, of bringing all of us of African descent together again in meaningful dialogue, and not just dialogue, but meaningful action. So allow me to recognize, of course, Aisha. Aisha, who is becoming a friend as well from the Aquarian Consult. She also visited St. Kitts and Nevis, and she visited me in my cabinet room, my meeting room, rather, and I told her that I will come to Africa. And today, I am in Nigeria. Let me introduce to you my distinguished delegation. With me, as was mentioned before, is the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. Interestingly enough, he is also the leader of the opposition. As you would know, we disagree on a lot of things. But there are some things that I have said to him, and he has agreed, that we must agree on. And that is to position St. Kitts and Nevis to build cooperation with our continent and other nations afar for the benefit of all of us in different spheres. Put your hands together for him. Also allow me to recognize the Honorable Samuel Duggins, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources and Cooperatives, Small Business, Entrepreneurship, Sports and Creative Economy, Entertainment and the Arts. Can you please stand, Minister? I introduce you to him. Allow me to introduce to you our distinguished Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Marcus Natter. Permanent Secretary in the Prime Minister's Office, Ms. Naima Hazel. Ambassador to the OECS, CARICOM, and ACS, His Excellency Larry Vaughan. He sang the national anthem. Allow me also to recognize and forever termed Her Excellency Rosalind Hazel, and she is part of the organizing committee. Executive Chairman of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, Mr. Calvin St. Just. My press secretary to my office, Mr. Javan Liebert. And Director of Creative Economy, Ms. Robertine Webb. And from the private sector, allow me to introduce the Executive Director of St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Ms. Sanya Aline. Let me further recognize, of course, the COO of Afrexim Bank, Mr. Alain Thierry, who present the speech today on behalf of President Orama. Allow me to recognize all other distinguished guests and permit me to, of course, stand on the order of precedence that was so ably delivered before the start of this most auspicious event today. I want to recognize members of the Diplomatic Corps and all the delegates who are sitting in with us. Welcome once again to all of you. I greet you with warmth and spirit, and the spirit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and by extension, the Caribbean. Allow me to share a few caveats about St. Kitts and Nevis with you that you will find quite intriguing. St. Kitts and Nevis became the mother colony of the whole of the Caribbean for Great Britain at that time. That is how important it was. It was also the center of French colonization in the Caribbean. One of the founding fathers of the United States of America, and I guess you all know who he is, Hamilton. Hamilton, who was a founding father, and you have seen the play with him, he was actually born in St. Kitts and Nevis, specifically on the island of Nevis. The other caveat you will know about St. Kitts and Nevis is that we had the first hotel in the whole Caribbean and one of the first in the whole region of the Americas, called the Bath Hotel, that was premised on warm water that came from the volcanic springs. So St. Kitts and Nevis has had a tremendous impact on the world. The movement for decolonisation started in 1935, before the Second World War, in an uprising in St. Kitts and Nevis that spread through all of Africa, the Caribbean, and even Asia, that forced the British to do a study called the Moyne Commission. That too started in St. Kitts. So I'm simply saying that we have always been a people who have sought to be independent and free from oppression. And today, our link to the African continent is a next step in our journey. So it is an honor to stand here. With you today in the heart of Nigeria, a land of immense power, promise, and pride. And as we gather to participate in what I believe will be one of the most defining summits of our time. As I stepped off the plane and onto Nigerian soil, I felt a surge of emotion that was difficult to articulate. It was a feeling of homecoming, not as a formality or metaphor, but as a truth deeply etched into my very being. Our bloodlines may span oceans, but our stories, our cultures, our ambitions, they are all connected. Africa is not a distant relative to the Caribbean. It is our mother. And today, we are not just visiting, we are returning with purpose, with vision, and with an unwavering belief in what we can achieve together. This summit is more than an assembly of minds. It is a declaration of intent. For too long, the conversations between Africa and the Caribbean have been occasional and symbolic. Today, that must change. Today, we must chart a course towards sustained, strategic, and structured collaboration, economic, cultural, political, and spiritual. We must recognize that in each other, we see reflections of ourselves. And in coming together, we unlock a wealth of possibilities that can lift generations out of economic uncertainty and into shared prosperity. In St. Kitts and Nevis, our government is guided by a bold and transformative vision that we call the Sustainable Island State Agenda. This is more than a policy framework. It is our national mission, a mission to build a resilient, inclusive, and self-reliant nation that thrives in the face of global challenges. At the heart of this agenda is climate action. We understand, like many of our Caribbean and African neighbors, that the climate crisis is not a theoretical threat. It is a lived experience. Hurricanes intensify, droughts prolong, coastlines erode, and our people are displaced. But we have chosen not to be victims of geography or climate. Instead, we are positioning ourselves as leaders in innovation and sustainability. One of the most ambitious undertakings in this regard is our investment in geothermal energy. Our island of Nevis, which with its volcanic heritage holds immense geothermal potential. We are moving steadily toward a future where our electricity grid is powered primarily by clean, renewable energy from beneath our very feet. The project is not just a solution for St. Kitts and Nevis. It is a model for small island developing states and African nations where similar geophysical capacity exists. Imagine what could happen if African expertise, Caribbean innovation, and international financing were brought together to scale these efforts across continents. It is not only possible, but I dare say it is necessary. Our commitment to sustainability extends beyond energy. St. Kitts and Nevis is also revamping its approach to agriculture, not just for food security, but as a foundation of economic independence. The COVID-19 pandemic reminded us that dependence on global supply chains, especially for food, is a dangerous vulnerability. In response, we are cultivating a new generation of farmers equipped with modern tools, climate-resilient crops, and a renewed sense of national pride. Yet we know we cannot do this alone. Africa, with its centuries of agricultural knowledge, its dynamic ecosystems, and its innovation in agri-tech, can be a critical partner in this journey. Joint research, seed banks, farm exchanges, and technological partnerships between all regions can revolutionize food production and distribution, not just for ourselves, but for an increasingly world that need more food. And let me dare say that the very thing that built Europe and Great Britain and North America, but especially Europe, was sugarcane and cotton, or sugar from sugarcane from the Caribbean. So our region played a significant role in what we call the Industrial Revolution by creating the agricultural base that was necessary. So economic resilience also means accessing the managing capital in a way that serves our people. Too often, access to affordable finance is the missing link between vision and reality, especially for young entrepreneurs, women, and small business owners. We have been working to reform our systems to ensure that capital reaches those with ideas and drive. And we believe that the future of financing must be shaped by us, by Afro-Caribbean innovation. From fintech solutions to diaspora bonds, from cross-continental venture capital networks to microcredit programs rooted in community trust, we must create our own instruments of empowerment. Let us not only seek capital, let us design it, control it, and direct it to where it can have the most transformative impact. It is where our Citizenship by Investment program also comes into focus. For over 4 decades, since 1984, St. Kitts and Nevis has operated the oldest and most respected CBI program in the world. Today, we are transforming it into a development-focused platform. Investors no longer simply acquire citizenship, they become partners in nation building. Their investments go directly into hospitals, schools, renewable energy, technology, and infrastructure. And here too, we are extraordinary potential for synergy. African investors and entrepreneurs can partner with our government to unlock access, not just to citizenship, but to mutually beneficial investment ventures. In fact, CBI can become a new diplomatic tool, a bridge between capital and conscience. But prosperity is not only measured in dollars and infrastructure. It is also found in our stories, our songs, our spirit. Culture is not a byproduct of development. It's our soul. The Caribbean owes its vibrancy to the deep well of African heritage. From the steel pan to soca, from calypso to carnival, our identity is rooted in the rhythms of this continent. Now we must elevate our creative economies. We must professionalize our artists, protect their intellectual property, and give them platforms that are far-reaching and felt. I envision a co-produced film between Nollywood and Caribbean studios, art residencies, and cultural festivals that draw audiences from every corner of the diaspora. So together, we can monetize our culture while preserving its integrity, turning creativity into a currency of its own. Tourism too stands at the intersection of identity and economy. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we are proud of our stunning beaches, historic sites, and world-class hospitality. But more than that, we are committed to developing tourism that tells our story. Afro-Caribbean heritage tourism that invites travelers, not just to relax, but to reconnect. We want to welcome our African brothers and sisters, not as tourists, but as kin. Direct flights, cultural itineraries, and collaborative marketing can build bridges in ways that no trade deal could ever accomplish. As we speak of cooperation and unity, it would be remiss not to acknowledge Dr. Didigus Jules, who would also speak today via technology. He is the SG of the OECS, which is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The OECS is a shining example of what can be accomplished when small nations stand together. We have harmonized our systems to do with health, unified our judiciary, collaborated on education, and shared resources for climate resilience. Now, imagine what we can do when the OECS joins hands with the Economic Community of West African States, the African Union, and the African Continent Free Trade Area. We would be unstoppable. We would not just influence policy, we would shape the future. Interestingly enough, while we gather here in Abuja, advancing our mission to forge stronger bonds between Africa and the Caribbean, a parallel and equally historic moment was recorded in Bridgetown, Barbados, in the Caribbean. There, officials from the Afreximbank, Africa's leading multilateral trade finance institution, participated in a groundbreaking ceremony for the Afreximbank African Trade Center. This center will serve not just as a physical hub for African Caribbean commerce, but as a symbol of concrete institutional ties now being built between our regions. It marks a new era of cooperation where trade, investment, and innovation flow not just in theory, but in practice. Put your hands together for the Afreximbank. This dual presence, Caribbean leadership here in Africa, and African institutions establishing roots in the Caribbean, demonstrates that our efforts are not one-sided, nor are they ceremonial. They are deliberate, they are strategic, and they are unfolding in real time. And as I represent the Caribbean on this side of the Atlantic, and as our African brothers and sisters extend their footprint across the Caribbean, we are together bridging a historic divide. We are proving that this partnership is no longer a vision for the future. It is happening now. So my friends, my brothers, my sisters, my family, the journey ahead will not be without its challenges, but the foundation is already there. We have shared bloodlines, shared values, shared struggles, and now we must pursue shared victories. So let this summit be remembered not for its handshakes and photo ops, but for its declarations that turned into decisions, and decisions that turned into actions. Let it mark the beginning of a permanent Afro-Caribbean partnership, bold, unapologetic, and visionary. And I leave you with this truth. The distance between Africa and the Caribbean is not a divide. It is a bridge. And today, we walk across that bridge together. It is therefore with great pride, with great hope, and with great faith in our collective future. That the next 400 years will be far removed from the previous 400 years, where Africa and the Caribbean linked together for our shared prosperity. And with that, I want to declare the Aquarian Consult Afro-Caribbean Investment Summit 2025 officially open. And may this summit be the summit that changes everything from what is to what we know it can be. Thank you, my brothers and sisters.